Hi, Neil. You are the CEO of Duke Royalty, Europe's leading corporate royalty financing company. And it's a pleasure to welcome you today and discuss how you help companies get access to a unique form of financing. Before we discuss further, can you give us a brief introduction of Duke Royalty and yourself, please?
Sure. And it's a pleasure to be here, Raphael. Thank you. Duke, as a 5-year-old company, we are just replicating a successful business model that's been around for decades, actually, in North America. And we spotted the opportunity, I myself, as a founder, spotted the opportunity to bring that successful business model to the UK. We've been around for 5 years. We have £100 million of invested capital into 12 investee companies, which we call royalty partners. We'll get to why we feel we call them partners. But our business is a public company, so we have permanent capital. And so this is not a short-term business model. As a public company, we have some of the largest fund managers and institutions, household names, as investors in our business. I myself ran a global mid-market investment bank in London for 10 years. So I've spent a good chunk of my career in London, in the city. But I'm here in my home office in Toronto right now, because this is a Canadian and the North American business model. We have a great team of executives with decades of royalty experience coming from the North American market, and we just simply so I spotted the opportunity to bring that across to the UK and Europe.
Fantastic. And let me ask you, given the current crisis, the first pandemic in 100 years, and some obvious parallels with the 2008 crisis, can you explain how royalty finance can benefit those companies seeking financing?
Yeah, sure. Which crisis is it? That's right. The pandemic. We've lived through Brexit as well as the pandemic, and I think that goes to the heart of this business, of this alternative financing method. It is built to last, and as I said, over decades in North America, through the 2000 crisis, 9/11, 08, all these companies, and why that is important is because uniquely we are investing for the long term. And when I say the long term, I mean like mining and oil and gas companies and pharma royalties, 20, 30 years. 30 years is our usual term for our financing. But what it is a little bit like a debt and a little bit like equity. It's a hybrid. It has no loss of control against equity, that you're not selling your business, you're not giving up the control. But also, as opposed to debt, we don't have any refinancing risk. So we are amortizing the loan over 30 years. So that gives you the peace of mind that you never have to face big chunks of principal being refinanced. So that's kind of some of the benefits for the entrepreneur. But think of it like a corporate mortgage, where you're taking out, we're looking for long-term established companies with a history of profitability, and we back management who doesn't want to sell, who sees the opportunity to either grow or take capital. And like a house, it's a 30-year term, but you don't have to live in your house for 30 years. There is a buyout premium with fees and penalties and whatnot, because we want to be that long-term partner for a business. And like equity, we want to participate in the growth. So there is some participation element. Once per year, we look at the performance of the business. But that means that, as you said, in this pandemic, there's going to be some companies that we are taking a less revenue from, or they are paying us less. So it works both ways. We participate in the upside and the downside.
That is great. And can you give me some color on how you've been working with some of your royalty partners?
Yeah, sure, Raphael. Obviously, in March, when the lockdowns occurred, every business was affected and everyone's lives was affected. So it's not something that we could see coming, and it was no one's fault. What we did as a firm was to assess everyone and work with every one of our entrepreneurs to see how this was affecting them. And it was all over the map. Some actually benefited, and some, like our consumer-facing businesses, had a temporary loss of revenue. So we had to, in those two instances, take a payment holiday and work with them to ease their cash flow constraints. And we can either equitize, we can defer the payments so they catch up later, equitize them or capitalize them. And when we're working on a basis with each one of our companies, and that's the point, is that we're flexible and we're going to work with our business owners in different ways according to their needs. And of course, Welltel, for example, that we just gave more capital to in June, was benefiting. They were in the telecommunications for businesses. A lot of their workers needed work from home, so they got actually additional work and benefit from the crisis. And as I said, we actually gave them additional capital to complete a strategic acquisition in the month of June 2020.
That's great. And now, looking at the future, what do you see in this market, and what are you planning to invest in?
Yeah, we've had a lot of questions about that here, and what does this mean for Duke Royalty? I think there's going to be winners and losers in a new normal, and people want different things. I just heard that 67% of people want to continue working from home if just for a small amount of time. That would never have happened before this pandemic. So I think we're clearly one of the winners in this new normal, because like the companies that I just mentioned, they know that we're here for the long term and we're looking out for them, and we're real partners with them, and we are not looking to get our capital back as quickly as possible and to the detriment of this owner who's taken the risk, whose lifeblood is in this business, and the entrepreneur and employs people, and this is his livelihood. We are supporting those people through thick and thin. But you know what happened? The banks kind of did their job, which means that they did not take risks. After the 2008 crisis, the governments and the EU and everyone put their restrictions on the banks so that they did not take risks, and because that precipitated the last crisis. And then so you've got these banks that are doing their job, which are not to be flexible, which are not to give out business loans to companies that can't afford to pay them back, even if the government is telling them, here's the money to do it. So the banks are going to look, when this is all said and done, everyone's going to come back and say, well, why didn't the banks give small business owners the lifeblood that they needed? That's terrible. But on the other hand, they're just doing their job, and their job is to not take risks. So our flexible capital, our long-term vision, our ability as a public company to not have repayment of our capital, because we have permanent capital. We are not looking to take capital from one person, give it to another, and then have to undo it like a private equity firm or other lenders that are 5 years or less. We see things a little differently, and as I said, I think we're one of the big winners of our new normal that we're going to be going through.
Thanks, Neil. That's great. And this concludes our conversation with Neil Johnson, CEO of Duke Royalty. Good having you on.
Thank you.
Bye.